On the agenda tonight, we're going back to 1973. We're going to be taking a look at Gram Parsons with Emmylou Harris, and they're going to be performing Big Mouth Blues. Hello, Phil here from Wings of Pegasus, and welcome to another analysis video. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. So, the fact that there isn't a lot of live footage of Gram performing, it means that this does have a little bit of tape slipping going on. You'll hear the pitch kind of vary from 1 second to the next, but on the whole it's pretty good, and I will be jumping into this about halfway through. So if you guys want to watch it the whole way through, there's going to be a link in the description below, so you can click on that, and this is from a whole set worth of performance. We're just going to be taking a look at Big Mouth Blues. But let's get Gram and Emmylou up on screen and see how they get on.
Got plenty of promised lands.
I'm just going to jump in here while we have this slightly extended guitar solo going on, but with this sound and the way that Gram tended to just blend everything together. When I'm talking about the sound, it's like we've got rock and roll in there with the progression and the playing going on guitar-wise, but then we've got that pedal steel overlapped. So it gives it that country twang and the country rock sound in there, and you've got so many things going on. And when the vocal comes in as well, you've got Emmylou Harris's vocal in there, very much that folk and country sound to it. So it's such a blend of different sounds and something that was totally unique. It is something that has been referenced in the past by Chris Hillman, who was in the Flying Burrito Brothers with Gram. He said that at the time, the late 60s, 1969, that they were seen as an alternative country rock band, and they couldn't get any play on the country charts because they were seen as a rock band, but then conversely they were seen as a country band by the rock charts, so they couldn't get any airplay on the rock charts. So They were in this place that hadn't really been discovered before, and a lot of people would describe the sound as Americana as well. But I think a lot of people have referenced Gram as being the main front runner in the development of the country rock sound and blending rock and roll with other genres to give it a sound where it just fits seamlessly together. When you're watching this performance, you don't think at any point that it doesn't quite go and it doesn't make sense. It's just great to listen to. Right at the beginning, Emmylou Harris is really getting into it with that tambourine, and I have done an analysis video on Emmylou, so you can check that out if you want to independently. I'll leave a link to that at the end of this video. It'll be in a box at the end, so you can click on that if you want a follow-up video to this one. But getting into Gram and his playing on the acoustic guitar here, we have got a couple of guitars going on and the pedal steel guitar as well. So it means that Gram's mostly playing rhythm here, but he does change it up from going into that strumming technique in the verses, and then once we're getting more into the chorus, he starts bringing in more downstrokes, more palm muting in order to simulate the other rhythm guitar that's going on with the classic blues progression that we get. We are going to be getting the guitar out at the end of the video, but we will jump back into the performance and watch it until the end. And there we have it. We've got a lot of great guitar work going on there from the pedal steel as well, and there are points at which you can start to hear that tape slow down a little bit, so we're almost a semitone below where it is, but then the tape speeds up again. So just before we get into the guitar, a quick mention of the vocals here. Gram with that relaxed vocal delivery that is so easy to listen to, playing and singing at the same time of course, and Emmylou coming in with those harmony vocals. It is easy to listen to because we've got everybody on stage here totally relaxed, and you can tell that they're enjoying themselves. And when you're watching a band that are enjoying themselves on stage, it is so much easier for you to enjoy it because there aren't any nerves on stage and you can just listen to and enjoy the music. But getting into the guitar that's being played here, we're starting in D, and we also have G and A that we're going to be jumping to. And with Gram, you can see that he's playing pretty much his basic chords, but he does jump into the rhythm that the second guitar is playing. So just from a rhythm perspective, have a look out for the way that Emmylou is playing that tambourine and just hitting the 2 and 4 of the beat. So it keeps it really driving along. But we do have that second guitar that is playing very much with the palm mute, but having this and and keeping it driving along. There's a lot of strumming going in there, a lot of downstrokes that are muted, so it's going to be punchy and it's going to keep things moving along nicely. And with that, it's really simplified. I mean, I know that you can move this up to the 5th fret if you want to, but we'll be moving it down to the 2nd fret because if you do struggle with bar chords, you can just move it down to the bottom of your guitar. And this is what Gram's doing as well when he does jump into this rhythm. So it means that you're playing that 2nd fret with that 1st finger of your D, open D string, and then effectively your 5th. But then we're just popping on and off with your 3rd finger. And it's really straightforward as long as you just make sure that you just hit those 2 strings. You want to have that kind of sound, and you can lean that 1st finger over onto the B string and the high E string if you want to keep those quiet and have that G ringing out, but then not having the B or the high E. So it means that you get that, and you can actually hear that 3rd finger coming on and then going back to the 1st finger. So then we're going to be jumping into a G, and if you want to keep that same rhythm going that we've just had on the D, then you can get into your G shape here with the 3rd finger playing the root note and the little finger on that high E string if you want on the 3rd fret. And if you're muting the A string, you can pop on and off of the D string with that 2nd finger. So you still get that same sound. Because it's a G, you can go a little bit further down if you want to. Before then jumping back into your D. Like that. And another thing that you might find thrown in there is this little run that we have. Just throwing on that little finger above that 3rd finger. Also, that as well, which is just coming down onto that D string, 2nd finger, 3rd finger, back to that 1st finger on the G, 2nd fret of the G. So we've got, and you want to hit that open D string as well after you've done that little run. Like that. You can apply that same principle to the G as well. So when I'm playing that little bit there, you can take that little finger from the high E string because we're not going as far as the high E string there. So you can just place that on above that 2nd finger to get that sound. And you can also have that going in there if you want to, which is 1st finger, 2nd finger, so that's 1st fret, 2nd fret of the A string, to get that kind of sound. And that way you can get a nice consistent sound from all of your rhythm and all of the chords, because it means you can do exactly the same thing with each of them. Also, just to mention that we're going to need an A chord in there as well, and it's exactly the same principle. So when we're playing the A, all we've done is move the D shape up a string. Same principles apply to the fills as well, just coming up with that little finger and that little 2nd finger, 3rd finger, going up to that 1st finger again, making sure you hit that open A string with it. Just a quick word on the lead work going on here. Because we're in D, it means that you can jump up to your pentatonic shape 1 in that major key, and we've got all that kind of stuff going on. And we also have some classic blues lines thrown in there as well. That same all that kind of stuff, and it is just seamlessly thrown in there, and it's just going to make sense with the playing that's going on. And sometimes with that rhythm playing that we have on the D, when we get over to the A, we'll sometimes get a few notes that are being played in that key of A, like there that I just played. When we go back to the D, exactly the same principle there. So you might hear that being thrown in, the playing of the lead over the top of the chords that are happening underneath, because when we get that D and and the fills, like that. Doesn't really matter what you play, but then when you get into the G, for example, that you might want to jump into that extended major pentatonic shape of G, and then you'll be back into the D. Exactly the same when we go to that A. Into the G again. You've got all of your major notes that you can take just from your G shape where you would be playing normally a minor pentatonic shape, but you can just take those major notes from there and just stick in one of those minor notes now and again. Typically, that major note following the minor, like that. Just from a rhythm perspective as well, you might find that Gram is making that change between his rhythm that kind of vibe, and then when he gets into just simulating exactly the same as that second guitar is playing, it means that he goes into those downstrokes, a little bit of muting, like that. But then when you put those two strumming patterns together and those two techniques together, it means that you're going to get a lot fuller sound, because you'll get one that's driving it along with that just constant downstrokes there, and when we get the you can start to exaggerate those downstrokes and catching those strings to get that percussive sound, like that. And it's something that is going to be emphasized with Emmylou, because she is using that tambourine in exactly the same way, going 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. But I do want to cover a little bit of Gram's history and career in this video. Sadly, he's one of those artists that died very young, at only 26 years of age. He would actually pass away at the end of the year that we're looking at here, in September of 1973. But he was inspired to get into music from a very young age. He saw Elvis in 1956, and that really did inspire him. But he did have a very tough childhood, because his dad passed away when he was only 12 years of age. That would have been in 1958, and it was just 2 days before Christmas as well. It left him understandably devastated, and his younger sister was devastated as well. His mother was a drinker, as his dad was, and they were both alcoholics. His mum also suffered from depression, and after his dad died, his mother remarried to Robert Parsons, and obviously Gram took that surname. Gram continued to perform and play in coffee houses and high schools, and in 1965 he attended Harvard University, and this is where he heard Merle Haggard for the first time and started getting more into country music from that influence. And he also started the International Submarine Band, and in 1967 they recorded Safe at Home, but that wasn't released until 1968, and by that time they'd actually separated. In 1968 he joined the Byrds after being spotted by Chris Hillman, and he was actually employed as a sideman, meaning that he got an hourly rate, he received a salary, and wasn't an official member of the band according to Chris Hillman. And it's something that I think in the mainstream press they saw Gram as an official member of the band, and in 1968 they released Sweetheart of the Rodeo. Unfortunately, Gram was still under contract from the previous record label that he was with, so they threatened legal action, which meant that a lot of these songs that Gram had recorded a lead vocal on had to be re-recorded, and that's something that Roger McGuinn then did, and Gram said at some point that Roger messed messed up some of those songs with his lead vocal, but Gram did still feature on some of those songs. In 1968, he left the band and became acquainted with Mick Jagger and Keith Richards from the Rolling Stones, and the following year, 1969, is when he formed the Flying Burrito Brothers. This was with Chris Hillman, and they released the Gilded Palace of Sin that same year. He went on tour and wasn't writing much at this time. He was starting to get into his drug use and partying a lot with the Rolling Stones. His record label at this point were marketing them as straight up country, and in 1970 they released Burrito Deluxe, but it didn't do well, unfortunately. It is one of those things I mentioned earlier in the video about them being too rock for the country stations and too country for the rock stations. So they struggled with airplay. So he left the Burritos after the next album and signed a solo deal in 1970 with A&M Records. And this is when he was working with Terry Melcher, the producer, and unfortunately, him and Terry liked cocaine and heroin and didn't get anything done. So Gram then accompanied the Rolling Stones on their 1971 tour of the UK, hoping to be signed to the Rolling Stones' new record label, but he wasn't. He was hanging out with Keith Richards quite a lot, but eventually was asked to leave, and he was told that he had outstayed his welcome. He went to hear Emmylou Harris sing at a club, and they became friends. He asked her to join him in the studio because he was now attempting to record his solo album again. The first attempt didn't go so well because of the drugs and all that kind of stuff. He was backed by several members of Elvis's backing band, the TCB band, and that stands for Taking Care of Business, and they were led by James Burton, and I do have a video on James here somewhere on the channel, so you can check that out independently if you want to. He wrote 6 new songs. He also included several country covers, so his creativity was revitalized at this point. As we can see, in 1973 he toured with Emmylou Harris, and this same year he was recording Grievous Angel, and that would eventually get released the next year, 1974, so it was released posthumously, and a very popular song on that album was called Love Hurts, and that is still part of Emmylou Harris's repertoire. And during a mini tour that they were doing, sadly Clarence White, a member of the backing band, died, and they went to his funeral, and this is when it was mentioned by Gram that when he died he would want to be cremated in Joshua Tree, and this was a national park, and is a national park over in the USA, if you don't know where it is, but he spent a lot of time there and he'd often vacation there. In this year as well, Gram's house burnt to the ground. It was a stray cigarette that started it all, and everything was destroyed apart from his car and a guitar. He split from his wife, and he then got together with Margaret Fisher, and she was his girlfriend. That's when they went to Joshua Park. So with Gram at this point, it was his girlfriend, his PA, and his PA's girlfriend. And his PA actually went off to get more supplies, I think, of marijuana. So he's left with the 2 ladies, and he said to them, I'm going to challenge you to a drinking contest. And they didn't want any part of it, so he then said that he would drink enough for all of them. And he downed 6 double tequilas. He then got some morphine off an unknown young woman on the way back to the Joshua Tree Inn, and she injected him with morphine, and it was Margaret who then realised that something wasn't quite right with Gram and gave him a cold shower and then put him to bed, went off to get some coffee for him, and at this point the PA's girlfriend watched over Gram, and this is where Gram then stopped breathing, and the PA's girlfriend started to give mouth to mouth, tried to resuscitate him. That failed. They called an ambulance, but sadly he was dead on arrival, and it was found that the amount of morphine that he had been injected with would have killed 3 regular morphine users. So it was just a massive amount, a massive dosage of it, and sadly he died at the age of 26, and that was on September the 19th, 1973. But there isn't a lot of video footage of Gram playing live, but fortunately we do have this, and we can see him teaming up with Emmylou Harris, and so young to leave everybody at the age of only 26. But what he did achieve in those few years would go on to inspire so many future artists. But thank you guys so much for suggesting this video for me to take a look at, and keep those suggestions coming in the comments below. Let me know what you guys think, and if you did enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the next one. Rock!